The Nanking event was one of the most horrifying occurrences of the Japanese rule of China. Terrible things were done all over the Yangtze Delta, including Nanking and Shanghai. It is unknown how many Chinese people have died so far. After World War II was over, people found out just how bad the crimes were. In this video, we'll discuss the shocking things that happened at the Nanking event. Hello and welcome to Uncovering Mythology and History. Before I start, please subscribe to our channel to get more exciting videos about anything in history. It is said that there are no absolute truths in history. However, while we may assume that historians' accounts of the past are based on objective facts and data, they are often influenced by their own biases and perspectives. Whether we look at it through the lens of colonial imperialism, internal civil wars, or in this case, the rape of Nanking, it is clear that your view of history will often depend on your interests, the interests of your country, and your cultural values. Even now, Japan, the United States, and China all have very different ideas about what happened to Nanking. Even though there are photographs, movies, diaries, interviews, and other sources that show what a terrible thing the Japanese did to the Chinese, Japan will either downplay or denies the Nanking incident. China wants an official apology and wants the world to know about the largest single-city massacre in the history of the world. On the other hand, Japan is annoyed that people are still talking about what they call the hazy past. But things weren't quite like they showed. Thousands of people, including soldiers and civilians, were mercilessly slaughtered in the Chinese city of Nanking by Imperial Japanese Army forces over a period of 6 weeks, beginning in late 1937. The horrible things that happened are called the Nanking Massacre or the Rape of Nanking because many women and girls were raped. Let's investigate the origins of this situation. Invasion preparation. Japanese forces in the early stages of World War II targeted Nanking after a devastating victory in Shanghai during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist leader of China, was afraid of losing his army in battle, so he withdrew practically all official Chinese troops from the city and replaced them with inexperienced auxiliary troops. Chiang also barred the official evacuation of the city's residents and ordered that it be held at all costs. Even though many people disregarded this command and ran away, those who stayed were left defenseless against the oncoming enemy. A message was sent to foreign reporters that the city would not give up and would fight to the death. Tang got together about 100,000 mostly untrained soldiers. Some of them were Chinese soldiers who had been in the Battle of Shanghai. The fate of Nanking is now in the hands of the International Committee, led by German citizen John Rabe. The International Committee for the Nanking Safety Zone was a small group of Western businessmen and missionaries who tried to set up a neutral area of the city where Nanking civilians could find safety. When it opened in 1937, the safety zone was about the size of Central Park in New York and had more than a dozen small refugee camps. The Chinese government moved on December 1, and the president left on December 7. All of the remaining citizens were told to go to the safety zone for their own protection. On December 11th, Rabe found that Chinese soldiers were still living in parts of the safety zone. This made the area a target for Japanese attacks, even though most people living there were civilians. Rabe said that the attempts to get rid of these Chinese troops had failed and that Japanese soldiers had started throwing grenades into the refugee zone. Nanking's demise. On December 13th, General Matsui Iwani led the first troops of Japan's Central China Front Army into the city. Even before they got there, word had spread about the horrible things they had done on their way through China, like killing contests, setting fires, and stealing. Thousands of Chinese soldiers were hunted down, killed, and buried in mass graves. Even though the massacre is usually said to have happened in the 6 weeks after Nanking fell, the Japanese army did other bad things before and after that time. As the Japanese military moved from Shanghai to Nanking, many terrible things were said to have happened. Many of the Japanese soldiers who had spent weeks marching and fighting hard in the Battle of Shanghai were hungry, disorganized, and tired. They wanted to get back at their enemies for their lives they had lost. Families as a whole were killed, and the elderly and babies were also killed. Thousands of women were also raped. After the attack, bodies were all over the streets for months. To get rid of the city, the Japanese stole from and burned at least a third of its buildings. The army was moving quickly toward Nanking because the officers and soldiers knew they could steal and rape as much as they wanted. Reports from people who were there and later studies show that between 20,000 and 80,000 women, including young girls and older women, were brutally raped and tortured. After being hurt, many of them, including victims of gang rapes, were cut up and killed. Most of the time, the women were killed right after being raped. This was often done through explicit mutilation, such as by sticking bayonets, long sticks of bamboo, or other things into their vaginas. In the Name of the Emperor, a documentary about the Nanking Massacre, a former Japanese soldier named Shiro Azuma talked openly about how people were raped and killed in Nanking. At first, we used some kinky words like pikahan, P meaning hip, kahana means look, pikahan means let's see a woman open up her legs. Chinese women didn't wear underpants. Instead, they wore trousers tied with a string. There was no belt. As we pulled the string, the buttocks were exposed. We pikakan. We looked. After a while, we would say something like, "It's my day to take a bath," and we took turns raping them. It would be all right if we only raped them, but I shouldn't say that. But we always stabbed and killed them because dead bodies don't talk. The most notable tragedy, as reported in the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun and the English-language Japan Advertiser, was a killing match between two Japanese officers. The competition, in which the two officers raced to see who could murder 100 people with a sword first, was covered like a sporting event, with frequent updates on the score over several days. At first, the Japanese agreed to honor the Nanking safety zone. However, in the end, these refugees were not safe from brutal attacks. In January 1938, the Japanese said that order had been restored in the city and took down the safety zone. Generally, the hospital had a normal capacity of 180 beds, but it was always packed to the point of overflowing during this time. B. Campbell called the Nanking Massacre a genocide because residents were still killed in large numbers after the battle, even though it was clear the Chinese would win. Jean-Louis Margolin, on the other hand, does not think that the atrocities in Nanking should be called genocide because only prisoners of war were killed systematically, while civilians were sometimes killed by random people who did not have orders to do so. However, killings continued until the first week of February. The city of Nanking was run by a puppet government until the end of World War II. The aftermath. One reason why people don't know much about the rape of Nanking is that Germany and Japan dealt with their wartime crimes in different ways. Germany has admitted that the wartime government as a whole was responsible for the crimes, not just individual Nazis. On the other hand, the Japanese government sees their war crimes as the actions of a few soldiers, not the actions of Japanese society as a whole. Soon after the end of the war, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East tried Matsui and his lieutenant, Tanu Hasawa, for war crimes. Both men were found guilty and were soon executed. But China and Japan still have trouble getting along because of what happened in Nanking. History revisionists, apologists, and Japanese nationalists have argued about what happened and used this to spread their ideas. Some people say that the number of deaths is exaggerated, while others say there was no massacre. The Nanking Massacre Memorial Hall honors those who perished in the Pit of 10,000 Bodies during the Nanking Massacre. UNESCO added a collection of materials relating to the Nanking Massacre Memorial to the Memory of the World Register. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, please let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.